The book is actually a collaborative effort where it reflects the work of 23 authors. Most of them are community college faculty from around the United States who participated in the seminar that you referred to that I managed at the U.S. Institute of Peace. There are 17 chapters, but in those chapters there are countless stories of community colleges that are doing really fantastic work. In fact, there's a reference in the book to your work here at Austin Community College. There are a number of lessons from the book that I think are important to reflect on. One of the things that I found in working on the book, and I found really very refreshing and very reaffirming in community colleges, was the importance of applied or experiential education. We often think of experiential education as something that we only use occasionally, or something that you use in training. But in community colleges, it's always been really essential to developing career awareness and developing skills. In peace building and in conflict resolution work, it's really important for students to understand actually how to do the work on the ground. There's something about theory, but it's more important to actually know what a practitioner does. There are two chapters in the book in particular that look at this dimension of experiential learning. One chapter is by a colleague at Jamestown Community College, and it focuses on a simulation that is conducted every spring and brings together about 15 community colleges. It's called the International Negotiation Modules Project, and it brings community colleges in across the U.S. To each community college acts as a separate nation, and they represent basically the hierarchical power of that country, be it diplomats or the government. And so these countries negotiate with each other online over the course of a semester on particular world events. And it becomes part of a particular class which they operate out of. It's really an important program because at the end of the day, students get this identity feeling like they're the president of North Korea, or maybe the beloved leader of North Korea in that case. And they feel like they really can understand the role of high-level diplomacy, which helps them develop kind of a career frame. Another chapter in the book references a program that takes place in South Florida at Indian River State College every year that brings together community college students that basically immerse themselves in a 4-day simulation where they're working actually as humanitarians in a conflict zone. So we do role-playing and simulations, often in the college setting, but it's usually kind of in the classroom or it's kind of tabletop. Here, community college students are going and actually working in the field to get this feel of what it's like to be a humanitarian. Students come from Northern Oklahoma College and Indian River State College and some other schools to engage in that. Those are just two examples, but overall this idea that learning by doing, and when it comes to learning about peace, is really important in community colleges.
You talk about the South Florida program. Students come from these different community colleges and they are placed in some sort of field work in Florida, right?
Well, they come in and they all arrive as members of this fictitious non-governmental organization called International Humanitarian Action. And they all arrive with their paperwork, their passports, and they have to go through customs in an airport. And then they're divided into teams. And then what they do is they spend 48 hours negotiating with generals and negotiating with government officials. They have to set up a humanitarian camp, an operation. They have to go into a prison and interview people who have been abused. So they act a bit like an international committee of the Red Cross. So there are multiple scenarios that they're in. This form of learning is sometimes thought about as it's complex environments. That is, conflict in complex environments where there's a lot of things going on at once become really important. We often think about skill sets as kind of singular skill sets, only applies here or applies there. But what we have to do is we have to get students to think about the range of things that they have to do during a span of time. So if you think about a situation like a natural disaster or certainly a war situation, students who have conflict and peace building skills can contribute a lot in that situation, but a lot will be asked of them, multiple skills, for instance.
I can see the value of these complex situations that are simulated for students, but that also makes me think about complex resources that are needed in
Right.
order to provide those opportunities. Can you talk about the resources that these colleges use in order to provide these opportunities?
Well, in this simulation, Indian River State College, one of the things that we've been benefited from is that the college has a public safety complex. Now, actually, most community colleges do public safety work, so it's the firefighters, it's the police, and so forth. So this public safety complex actually has a replicated jail and has other things that would be necessary, a village, a mock village where we can run activities through. So luckily the facility is very nice. But frankly, we've been looking at this for several years now. I don't think it would be that difficult for a community college to run this type of simulation. Increasingly, you're seeing large-scale simulations run to prepare for other types of natural disasters, like a chemical disaster or something of that nature. So it isn't even so much challenge. It does take a bit of coordination. The other lesson that I've learned through this process is really the importance of integrating the work of peacebuilding and conflict resolution through many, many fields. That often there is this notion, and this operates a bit at the four-year college level, is that there's a specific degree in peace studies or conflict resolution, and students should seek that degree. But one of the things that I've learned, and I think is an important lesson, is that no matter what the discipline is that you're studying at a community college, be it business administration or nursing or political science or a range of fields, that part of it could focus on understanding conflict and being a peace builder. One of the examples that I know well of is my wife teaches at a community college in Maryland, and one of the things, and she's nursing, she teaches nursing. So one of the things that she has her nursing students do is that they take an exam to understand their conflict styles, because in nursing there's often at the professional lots of conflict. So she gets students to sensitize themselves to the way that they approach conflict. The Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument is what she uses. The other thing that she did last year was she had speakers from the International Committee of the Red Cross, because humanitarian work is part of peacebuilding. They come and talk to students. She actually got a grant from somewhere in order to support that, and to get community college students to realize that upon graduation, their career trajectory could include the international. They could go work for a non-governmental organization overseas. They're not limited to what goes on in the community. So nursing, for instance, I look at other fields like certainly the humanities and the social sciences. You don't have to have a course in peace. You could take an English course, or you could take a religion course and infuse it with notions of understanding and tolerance and looking at different levels of conflict and how that works out. I know one of the challenges is always looking at the sciences, for instance, that we think about biology and we think about other fields. I know a number of community colleges that have developed peace studies programs that have incorporated, for instance, environmental science. One of my colleagues is the director of the Peace Studies program at Delta College in Saginaw, Michigan. And it's peace studies and environmental science, essentially. So he focuses on sustainability. So as part of his group of faculty work on it, he brings in biologists and other people that look at sustainability issues, because when we think about peace, it's just not a matter of kind of human security. There's an element of environmental security. How do we protect our environment for the future? But I think of other fields where I've seen innovative things done. I mean, you look at kind of mathematics and other science areas that, if you look at history, the great debates over the centuries often have dealt with issues of science. So one of the examples is you take the situation of Galileo, for instance, and Galileo, kind of said something very audacious. He said, what, the Earth is not the center of the universe, the sun is, and he was put away for that, or he was, was arrested by the church. Well, if you're teaching an astronomy class, couldn't you use that as an example of a great debate that took place and how it was resolved, and the fact that conflict in that situation, rather than it becoming unmanageable and the whole destruction coming from that basically created a new view of science for the future. So I think there are lots of examples that exist in other fields and other disciplines that can be pulled out to show examples of how conflict can be taught and can be looked at.
Can you talk a little bit about what you see as the benefit for students? So if students are coming here to just get their degree and transfer, or get their degree and go work, what is the added benefit for them to do this extra work?
It's a very important question, and one of the things that it acknowledges, first of all, is that students are coming for an education because they're trying to develop some sort of a skill or aptitude. Increasingly, we're recognizing the importance of workforce development and going to work or transferring, and so students are always kind of looking at it, well, what am I getting out of this? When you study about conflict, one of the things that you understand is not only the world of conflict, but you learn about yourself. You learn about your own capabilities. You learn about your own learning styles. I mean, when we talk about conflict, we're also talking about self-awareness. We're talking about communication skills. We're talking about how to engage with somebody. We're talking about how to work collaboratively. So for instance, in conflict resolution, we focus a lot on the idea of working as teams. If you look at a job application today, I could almost guarantee that one of the things will be how to work. You've got to be able to work with a team. And because of the pedagogical approaches in conflict resolution, faculty tend to get their students to work in cooperative exercises, so they learn that idea. One of the emphases in conflict resolution education, peace education, is dialogue. That the model traditionally has been debate, and that's important, but often we have to be able to talk to each other and engage with each other, and that's a skill set that comes through all this. So one of my colleagues at Cuyahoga Community College, when they develop a peace and conflict certificate there, they spent a lot of time looking at what the market needed and what the market would expect from this. And they found that the skills that I just mentioned, this idea of collaborative learning, self-awareness, being able to dialogue rather than compete with someone, were really skills that employers wanted and they wanted for their employees. So in many respects, a conflict resolution peace studies program is ideal to prepare people for the workforce. It's ideal for prepare them to go and to succeed in a job. You know, people don't fail at work today because they're incompetent in the content. They often fail because they're not able to connect and to work with each other. So peace studies really enhances that. If you're transferring, you know, certainly one of the added values here, it prepares you from a critical thinking standpoint, but also from a global competency standpoint to succeed at the four-year college level. I mean, studies have shown that community college students, when they transfer, often succeed at a higher rate than students who had started in that four-year institution. Well, peace studies and conflict resolution only enhances that possibility.
What are some professions that somebody who gets a four-year degree or a two-year degree in peace and conflict studies might be better prepared for, or are more specifically prepared for?
Well, I think one of the things that I like to think about and remind myself of the reality is that most community college graduates will stay within their community. That is, they're tied to their community. They will be the PTA presidents, they will be the cops, they will be the business owners of their community. And if I was a PTA president, I think I would need to know how to work cooperatively. I would need to know how to dialogue. If I'm a police officer, I would need to know how to use, say, a restorative justice approach, which really brings often somebody who's been charged with a crime with the community. I think a cop often needs to do a little bit of street mediation when they're going and investigating a situation so that it doesn't escalate. Community colleges are producing our teachers. They're producing our nurses. They're producing our business owners. All of those fields are fields where those skills can be applied. And one of the things that you know, people who study the field are looking for, well, the job of conflict resolution specialist, I'm looking for that, or I'm looking for the job that says peace builder, I'm looking for the job, you know, that's very, very specific to what I study. Those jobs exist, but they're not the prevalent jobs that are out there. It's the jobs that are there already that you're interested in that you take a different perspective in, and you can make those jobs different than they were, improve them because you bring these skill sets with you.
What do you predict is the future of programs in peace and conflict studies?
Well, at the community college level, we've seen a lot of growth in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there were a handful, and today I have a website that I kind of list programs as they're developing. We have nearly 30 community college programs that have some sort of peace and conflict initiative. Some of them are credit-based, some of them are non-credit-based. One of the things that's important about community colleges that makes community colleges unique and often differentiates them from four-year institutions is their connection to the community. That the community is part of the community college. There are four-year institutions you can go to where they're kind of, it's a fortress and there are walls, and the people in the community never get to it. But here it's part of it. And so the community colleges that are doing very community-based lectures and activities and fairs, getting the community engaged is very, very important. At the community college level, I see this increasing. I see this, it may be incremental. I see what's happening is people are recognizing that in the United States, nearly 50% of American undergraduates are in community colleges. Now, when you say that to a four-year faculty member, they're often shocked because they often have no awareness of what goes on in community colleges. But if you picked 10 random undergraduate students on the street, 4 to 5 of them are going to be in community colleges. And those 4 to 5 students actually are going to be the pillars of society 10 years out. If we are serious as a society in creating a culture of peace and tolerance, in skilling people with the abilities to resolve their own conflicts, making conflict resolution and conflict transformation a cultural and national value, we have to be working with community colleges. We can't just leave this to four-year graduate, often elite programs. It's the community college students of today that will be the leaders of tomorrow, so it's really important. So I see this continuing to grow at the community college level.
There are two topics that have been of much focus at ACC in the past few years for really good reasons that I feel like are related to peace studies, and I want to hear your thoughts about that. One is the issue of cultural competence, and the other is equity, as opposed to equality.
Okay.
So where do you see the intersection between those and peace and conflict studies?
Well, cultural competence is really critical in community colleges, and what I mean by cultural competence is really, first of all, being able to learn about other cultures. It's that opening yourself up to the opportunity to learn about another culture. And this requires levels of skill like listening and engagement and so forth. And then once you learn about another culture, working and supporting other cultures collaboratively to seek common goals and common ends. One of the things that we have to recognize is that the diversity, and the most diversity, is taking place in community colleges. That if you look nationally, certainly there are community colleges that are not diverse ethnically and culturally. But urban community colleges like Austin Community College are very, very diverse. So when people come to this country, to use the metaphor, when they come off the boat, we used to say, when they come here, they're going to community college. They need to learn English, they need to get a skill, they need they want to become an American, whatever that means. And so they're bringing with them heart-wrenching stories of where they came. Many people who come to the United States are fleeing from oppression, have been subject to human rights abuses, and they're in a community college classroom. And often the faculty member doesn't even recognize it. It's kind of hard to find that out. We have to create an environment in the classroom where people who are from culturally different environments feel safe to share their experiences. And the students that are kind of more mainstream American have to be open to learning about those experiences, because collectively we're America of the future. I think when we think about equity, we think about the same thing also. That is, looking at populations and providing them with opportunities, and providing them with the same opportunities. And and often people who don't have opportunities because of being disadvantaged or being recent immigrants, doing what we can to support those people so that they have a fair stand in the economy and fair stand in society. I think that's one of the issues in peace studies, is getting students to recognize the inequity that exists in society. Often understanding that many students in the classroom 3 or 4 generations ago, their parents were recently arriving into this country and are in the same state that many of their fellow students are. So part of it is this spending time with our students, creating a classroom where students from elsewhere can be empowered in the classroom, and students that are already here can learn from those students.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that I haven't asked you about?
Once again, I'm really pleased to be in Austin. I think what has been going on here is just fantastic. I know you and faculty here have been working for a number of years to bring this together. I'm glad to see that it's kind of at the point where it's going to be kind of going out the door, so to speak, and kind of put out there. Any way that I can support, I'm glad to do it. So good luck from here on in, and I hopefully we'll come back again to visit.